One of the best things about living in San Diego is how dog friendly it is. But there are some things you need to know that are a little bit unique to San Diego when you take your dog out and about. In this video, I am going to share with you a number of things that you can do with your dog in San Diego, but also how to keep them safe while doing it. My dog, Pisco, loves to explore. He wants to go everywhere with me, and I take him as many places as I possibly can. Probably one of our favorite things to do together is to go to the beach. San Diego has 5 off-leash dog beaches, and I did an entire video on them, so go check that out if you want more details. But we also have many other beaches that allow dogs, including Mission Beach, Ocean Beach, Pacific Beach, La Jolla Shores, Del Mar, and Cardiff. Although I do recommend checking on the rules on all of these before you head out. Just Google, dog rules for whatever beach, or you can go to just the sandiego.gov website and they have all that information, because the rules can vary depending on the time of day and the time of year. They try to keep the dogs off the beaches, especially during tourist season, so during the summer. For example, Del Mar, which is the closest beach to me, has the most complex dog rules of any beach I've ever seen. There are 3 different parts of the beach, and they each have different rules at different times of the year. The other thing to think about when you are going to the beach is, what's the tide doing? It's a lot easier to go to the beach with your dog when the tide is out because there's a lot more beach for them to play on. So I like to check the tide schedules. You can just Google tides. I do like Del Mar tides or whatever, and there's a lot of information on that. There's also apps you can download, but just check, because there have been times when I've showed up to a beach without checking and it's been high tide and there's basically no beach. In fact, there are some beaches that completely disappear. So it's a really good idea to check the tides. Of course, the number 1 rule when enjoying these beaches is to please pick up after your dog so that we don't have to worry about stepping in poop while we're walking on the beach. Also, whenever you go to the beach, touch the sand with your hand, the dry sand, because sand can get really, really hot. If you wouldn't want to walk on it barefoot, neither will your dog. Also, take water for them if you're going to be there for a while. Dogs don't understand that salt water is not good for them, so they're going to drink whatever they can find. There are also spots where your dogs can go swimming in the ocean or in the bay, which is awesome, but you have to be really careful. So places like the Del Mar Dog Beach, you can actually, there's like an inlet area that a lot of people let their dogs into, but the current in there is really, really strong, and especially if the tide is going out, I personally wouldn't let my dog in there at all, but definitely not unless they're like a super strong swimmer, because I've seen dogs getting pulled out, and if the owner's not paying attention, you could lose your dog. If you really want to let them swim in like calm waters, there's a great spot at Ocean Beach, and there's also Fiesta Island and all of the bay around it that's all good for dogs. However, even then, pay attention. I know somebody whose dog actually got pulled out into Mission Bay, like far enough that they had to be rescued. Unfortunately, there are cities in San Diego that don't allow dogs on their beaches. Some of those are Solana Beach, Encinitas, Carlsbad, and Oceanside. And while I love these places to live, they do get some points knocked off for not allowing my dog on the beach. Another great thing you can do with your dog here in San Diego is to go hiking. Most all of the hikes allow dogs. You can check this though on the All Hikes app, and the only ones I really know of that for sure do not allow dogs are Torrey Pines, the Cabrillo National Monument, and the zoo. I know there are a couple others, but those are the main ones that I think people mostly ask about. Definitely take your dog out. There is so much to explore in San Diego, but there are a bunch of things you need to be aware of. First of all, I don't know of any hikes that allow dogs off leash, and there are a number of reasons for this. We have coyotes, and if your dog is running around off leash, comes across a coyote, that could be really bad, especially if they're little. They can be carried off in just a fraction of a second. And don't think coyotes only come out at night. They absolutely do not. In fact, we have coyotes in my complex constantly. Just yesterday morning, one jumped over the fence right in front of me and went trotting down our little trail. They're not afraid of people necessarily, and they absolutely come into populated areas, so you will see them on the trails as well. The next thing is rattlesnakes. These come out mostly when it starts warming up, and you will see them sunning themselves across the trail. You have to be really careful with these because it's so easy to like just walk up on them and not even like realize they're there. And dogs don't know that they should stay away from them. They just want to sniff them and they're like, oh, what are you? Like, let's be friends. So there are actually classes that you can have your dog take where they learn to avoid rattlesnakes. But if they're off wandering around in the bushes or anything like that, there's no way that they're gonna know that there's a rattlesnake there until they step on it. Another thing is poison oak, which is kind of all over the place. So you have to learn to look for it. But if you're letting your dog off leash and they're wandering along the edges of the trail or off trail, they could very easily stumble into some poison oak. And if you touch them after they've been in the poison oak, you will get it on you as well, and then you have poison oak. So definitely want to avoid that. Foxtails are another common danger here in Southern California. Foxtails are pretty much everywhere. You have to be really careful because a dog can easily sniff them and it goes up their nose and it can actually work its way into the dog's brain and be very, very bad. It can also get stuck in their paws and it can work their way into things and cause all kinds of very painful and expensive problems. So definitely make sure that you're keeping your dogs away from those. Don't let them sniff them, but also check them for foxtails so that they're not like cleaning themselves and then getting those later or having them like work their way into their skin just because they've been hanging out on their body. Some other things to check for are ticks. Very common around here, so make sure you check your dog after every walk. Also, if you're on the beach, there could be tar, so check their paws. Another thing is those little tiny burrs. Those get stuck between Pisco's pads all the time, so definitely another thing to check for. Of course, the biggest issue when you are hiking is the heat. In San Diego, it heats up real fast. Even first thing in the morning, when the sun is beating down on you, it can get really, really hot. And we pretty much don't have shades on our hikes in San Diego. So there's not really anywhere to hide from that heat. In fact, the San Diego Humane Society recommends not taking your dog on a hike if it's over 70 degrees. And I've actually learned this the hard way. I took Pisco on a hike one time. It didn't really feel that hot to me, but very quickly, he was like stopping in any shade he could find. He was laying down. He was fighting me every time I tried to get him to move. And I still feel bad about it. We ended up turning around, but I probably pushed him too far and now he doesn't really like to hike anymore. Definitely be very careful of this. Consider starting your hikes like really, really early in the morning, like at sunrise. Some people even hike in the dark because of the heat. Make sure you take extra water. You can also consider cooling vests that they can put on. Just make sure your dogs are not getting overheated. They can also burn their paws when it's really hot or just hurt their paws when they're hiking in general. So take some vet wrap with you. That's that like ace bandage looking stuff that actually sticks to itself. It can be really good to cover up any ouchies on the paws. Sunscreen can be another good idea, whether you're hiking or at the beach or just out on the water, whatever. Their little noses can burn, their ears can burn, even if their skin is just showing through their fur, which Pisco's often does when I get him shorn really short. That can burn as well. One of the first things that I did with Pisco when I moved here was learn how to paddleboard with him. We actually took a great class. If you want the name, just comment below. I'm happy to give it to you. He loved it. He thought it was so fun. But while paddleboarding or going out on boats, there's boats that you can rent, like paddle boats and other types of small boats that you can actually rent in Mission Bay, and you can take your dog out on them. On any of those, it's a good idea to have them wear a life vest, even if they can swim. If they fall overboard, it's a lot easier to pick them up by a handle than to try and wrestle with a wet, squirmy dog. Those life vests can also make it even hotter for your dog. So I know Pisco definitely gets really hot in it, and I've found that now I can only take him paddleboarding when it's pretty cold out, which of course I don't like, so then we just don't go as often. And of course, all the other things that we've talked about, extra water, sunscreen, stuff like that, apply for these as well. In San Diego, restaurants and stores are all pretty dog friendly. So if there's a patio, chances are you're gonna be able to take your dog out onto it, unless maybe you have to like walk through the restaurant to get to it. And many stores will even allow your dogs. I personally am a plant fan, as you can see. So we go to a lot of nurseries, and of course the dogs are always allowed at those. But also, you know, coffee shops often allow them in, and basically just ask if you're wondering. So many people understand how important dogs are in our lives here in San Diego that they'll often just let them in. Of course, and this really shouldn't even have to be said, but if you are taking your babies out and about and running errands with you, do not leave them in a hot car. It gets hot really, really quickly in the car. So even if it's like only in the 60s or 70s, it can get really hot and uncomfortable for them. So always leave the windows down and try and park in the shade when you can. I take Pisco with me on a lot of showings, and he just absolutely hates being left home. So I know he prefers to be in the car, even if it's a little bit hot. But I'm always trying to get him into the shade as much as possible. I always leave the windows open and always have extra water available for him when he is in the car. But I'm also very cautious that if I'm going to East County and it's really hot, he doesn't get to go with me. The goal, of course, is to enjoy living in paradise. I mean, San Diego's amazing, but we want to make sure that you can do it safely at the same time. So I hope these tips and tricks help to keep your fur baby safe while you guys are enjoying living in paradise.